The Rif. Yeah. So listen to the Rif. The Rif learns it like this. The Rif says, Ben Ish halach Krach. There's a whole Girsa question here, like whatever. Anyway, Ben Ish halach Krach Amar Rabba Lo Shanu El Sha'asad Lachzar B'Leil Yodalad. Now here's his key. It's not in there, but I just want to read it quickly. V'Nisake V'Lo Chazar, because the Ramban's going to get into the Rif. Okay. V'Nisake V'Lo Chazar. So therefore, if my intention is if I'm someone from Yerushalayim, I come to Modi'in, and my intention is to what? Is to return back to Yerushalayim. Even if I get stuck in Modi'in, okay, what happens?
You have to read it again.
No. Let's say I'm stuck. Let's say my intention was to return to Yerushalayim. And I'm in Modi'in.
The snowstorm thing.
Yeah, the snowstorm.
Right. You wouldn't.
You wouldn't have to, which is what's up with that. Okay, so look at the Ramban.
There's more strength to the whole weird das.
Well, there's no question the Rif is focusing that's all an issue of das. Whatever my das is, regardless of where I actually am, if my das is to be in another makom, okay, that's what it goes by. Okay, take a look at the Ramban. Who's reading?
I'll read.
Okay. Or you'll read. So Amar Kosev.
Amar Kosev Efshar Shalom.
So it's a Mechamas Hashem. Remember Mechamas Hashem? Mechamas Hashem is the Ramban.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why?
Okay. That's the name of a sefer. Yeah.
Okay. Shalom is bar lo aval devarim nechonim himekach perisha.
Okay, so he says this. He says that well, he's commenting on the Baal Ma'or.
Or separate.
Where, Nizbaru? No, it means not clear. So he's saying that it's the Baal Ma'or didn't really understand what the Rif was talking about. Okay, so now I'm going to explain what he was talking about. So now let's focus on what he's going to say. The Baal Ma'or is on top. Oh, you don't have the Baal Ma'or. We don't need to see the Baal Ma'or. Don't worry. Just read the Ramban. V'yom she'ein zeh paras me'achar l'das. Let's translate, okay, slowly. So he's saying like this. He's saying that for sure by a Ben Krach, right, a walled city guy, Yerushalayim guy, shehalach le'ir, so he goes to Modi'in. She'im asid lachzor limkomo b'leil yodalat. If his intention is to go back to where?
To Yerushalayim. Right.
On the 14th, afal pishin is akev, even though he's, let's say, prevented from going back on the 14th, kora kimkomo b'layla v'yom. So he would read, this is what's amazing, okay? The Yerushalayim guy, who's in Modi'in, okay, we'll go to the Ramban saying, and his intention is to return back to that night, and he can't get out of the city, right. Okay? When does he read?
That night.
No.
Wait, what?
Look what he's saying. He says, no. She'im asa lachzol imkomo b'ldel yodad afish nisakev kora kimkomo, like from where he's from.
Oh.
B'layla v'yom. She'ein zen nikra paras, because he's not considered a member of the unwalled city. Shlon nisakev adas. What's he saying?
So das makes you a member.
Well, just factually. Don't worry about that yet. You're right, but just factually. When does this guy read?
The 15th.
Where?
In Yerushalayim.
No, he can't make the Yerushalayim.
He can't make it back?
Right.
There.
Come on. In the Modi'in. All right, so that's what's amazing. The Ramban's saying that this guy would end up reading where? He'd end up reading, when? He would read, if his intention is to go back, he has a train ticket, and I'm getting out of town, all right, from Modi'in to Yerushalayim. My train ticket says, 2 p.m., okay? If he has that, okay, and the train's shut down, he would actually read Megillah on the 15th. On the 15th. So is that clear though? Are we good with that? So that's a very interesting idea. So you could be a Jerusalemite who's stuck in Modi'in, and you'd read on the 15th in Modi'in. Koreh Kimkomo, in Modi'in. Okay? Ben Yama. So, but on the other hand, if you don't have das to return back on the El Yodalad, El B'Yom Yodalad, Nase Pruz Ben Yama. You become a Pruz Ben Yama. Okay, V'Kori Moim, Me'achar Shenis Akev Kan. Okay, it's meaning that after you become stranded there, you still would read with them. Okay? Even, what's he adding?
Even if
the
intent is Tesvav?
No, and he'd also read on Tesvav as well.
Oh, when you get back?
When you get back. Or let's say he's stuck there. He'd be there as well, Tesvav. Okay?
What?
He'd read both days.
Yeah.
Both days. Let's say he's stuck by the snowstorm.
No, but then he stops getting stuck and then he goes back.
No, but for
But
sure.
At first he thinks he's stuck.
But let's say he says, my intention is to go back Yudala during the day, okay, to return back to my Krach. And what happens? A snowstorm happens, okay. He's chayav to read on the 14th, and
And the 15th.
the 15th. That's what he's saying, right?
Shilu.
Af yom tesvav shilu yatzav v'chazalo hayanasa mukaf b'yom tesvav.
Yeah.
Okay, so because if he would have left, he would have been considered a mukaf.
Right.
V'haya koreh kan v'kan. Okay, now what's this idea? V'hachi amrina b'Yerushalmi. This is the key point here. This is the key point in the Ramban. V'chei matzino. Read.
בכל מקום שאין נוסעים עליו חומרי מקום שהוא שם אלא כשאין דעתו לחזור.
Okay, so she'ein nosin alav. We don't place on him chumrei makom, right? The chumras of the place. Shehu sham, that where he is. Ella kishein daito lachzor, unless his das is not to go back to where he's from. So let's make it simple. Okay, let's take a New Yorker and a Philadelphia guy. Right. So Philadelphia loves cheesesteaks. Okay. Right. So and that's what defines him as a Philadelphian because he eats cheesesteaks all the time. Okay. He's a Philadelphia cheesesteak guy. Okay. Are there Philadelphia cheesesteaks in New York? No, not really. They're not real Philadelphia cheesesteaks. They're imitation ones. Okay. What's my point? My point is that if a Philadelphia guy goes to New York, okay, so if he goes to New York, right, is he still a Philadelphian?
Yes.
Yes, he's still defined as a Philadelphian. Okay, even though he's in New York right now, as long as his intention is to go back to Philadelphia, he's defined as a Philadelphian. He doesn't take on the chumras of New York. He wouldn't have to eat New York pizza. He doesn't take on the chumras of New York. He is a Philadelphian. That's what he's defined as. Okay, unless.
Are we considered Da'ato Lachzor?
Great question. Hold on to that. Elo kashein daito lachzor. Vafilu amad sham, right? Kama shalo. I'm sorry. Vafilu amad sham, kama shalo das lo alolo. Okay. So what's he saying? What's his idea here? Okay. So how do we understand this idea of das, and how do we understand this idea of chomer makom? You understand the question? I tell you, okay, that like the Ramban's saying, that if you're a Philadelphian and you go to New York, right, you're always a Philadelphian.
Yeah, but you still have to abide by New York laws, state laws.
Right, but he's saying no. Yes, okay,
Yeah.
but I'm saying b'pi halacha, you wouldn't have to. Or is he saying no? That's dina machuzina.
Why wouldn't that same idea apply here?
Because it's not dina machuzina. Dina k'machuzina dina is about a foreign government. Okay, but you're on the right track though. The point here is that if I go ahead, okay, and I'm a Ben Krach, and I go to a city. Okay, what am I ultimately? I'm still a Ben Krach, right? So normally you would say it always goes by where you're from. Okay, but what's different? Except if my das is not to return. Okay, now in a situation of living, that makes a lot of sense. Let's say let's take up your question. You come to Israel for the year, okay, but you're coming here for a fixed amount of time. Your das is to go back. So you're never really an Israeli,
Never.
right? You never allow yourself to become an Israeli. But let's say you came here and your intention was not to go back.
Then it would be Israel.
You become an Israeli, right? But of course, there has to be an expression of that. It can't just be you say that and let's say you leave the next day back to America. You know what I mean? It has to be where you're living here. But the point is, where you live, where you establish your roots, where you build your house, where you get your job, that's going to define your identity, right? So David Press is a Richmondite. Richmondian, whatever. You're a Richmond guy, right? Because that's where your home is. That's where your roots are. So even if you're in Israel, right? The fact you're planning on going back home, that's not going to uproot your identity as a person from Richmond.
Right.
Okay?
Is it Israeli? It is.
No, it's Israeli. Yeah. So now here, what makes this different? Okay? Here you got something strange, because you have a Ben Krach that comes to the ear. His intention is to return, right? Or not return, whatever. Even if his intention is not to return for the Chag, he's going to return after the Chag. Let's say that Ben Krach says the following: I'm going to Modi'in, okay? I plan on returning to Yerushalayim on the 20th of Adar, okay? So he's still a Jerusalemite,
Right.
yet he's chayav to read in the city.
Right.
Why? The minhag, usually minhag, the idea of a minhag makom is that the minhag expresses itself from the makom. It's dependent on the place. So again, if the custom is to eat a certain food on the 15th of July in Philadelphia, right? That's a minhag in Philadelphia. In other words, if you're a Philadelphian, that's what you celebrate. Okay. Now, what makes you a Philadelphian? The word I always like to use. What makes you a Philadelphian? Not Pearson. How do you become a Philadelphian?
You're
In general, halachically, what's the halachic
temporary.
term? No, what's a halachic term to make you a Philadelphian? You have a what to the makom?
Shechus?
Close. A tziruf.
Zero.
Okay, you're tziruf. And how do you make a tziruf to the makom? You live there.
Okay.
Okay? That's simple. All right? So normally, if that were the case, right? If that were the case, then if a Jerusalemite goes to Modi'in, right, he's always defined as a Jerusalemite. Okay? So what's different about Megillah? This is the key thing. Okay? This is the move you have to make, according to Ramban. Okay? What is it then by Megillah? Okay? Where does the minhag come from by Megillah?
Malcolm.
No. If it really did,
Then you would never be chayav for the.
bingo. So it can't come from the makom.
Yeah.
Okay? It can't come from the makom. So where does it come from then? Now remember what we said before about what. Remember what we did a few days last week about the Ron. The Ron I've been quoting like a banshee, right? So there's an idea of 2 days of Purim, right? And they tied each day to a
place.
place. But think about it. I'll put it a different way. On Purim, we call it Ben Krach. Okay, is there a reality of Ben Krach outside of Purim?
No.
Yes.
No. Yes. No. How can there be reality of that?
No.
You're never going to be called the guy.
I think
Yeah.
I don't
Wait,
know.
let's say you're a Jerusalemite, right? The fact that Yerushalayim is a Krach, that's irrelevant. You never called it Ben Krach outside of Purim. You know what I mean? Ben Krach is a unique identity that only exists on Purim.
Oh, so the minhag's really, it's not really telling the land. Malcolm, I thought it was telling about Megillah.
It doesn't the minhag your identity or the ideas of tziruf and etc. They're not dependent on the makom. Okay, that's not where you're from, right? It's what gives that definition of where you're from. The mitzvah, right? The mitzvah of Megillah is what defines you as Ben Krach or Ben Ir, not
Malcolm.
the makom itself. The makom is not what creates the nihug. It's the mitzvah that creates the nihug. The mitzvah of Purim. Okay? So if that's the case, that's why you can have an idea of a guy being...
Krach.
Right, no, the question is, when does the reality of mitzvah strike him? When is the mitzvah real to him? If you're a Ben Krach and you're in... That's what Purs Ben Yomo is.
So it's just
If you're a Ben Krach and you're in... No, if you're a Ben Krach and you're in, what do you call it? You're in an unwalled city, okay? There's only one thing that can create a tziruf between you and the place that you're at. Your das, right?
Right.
What you're thinking. But the point is, it's not that you're now considered a resident of Modi'in. You're considered a Purs Ben Yomo, right? That's a chiddush. You're a Purs Ben Yomo because there's a reality to the mitzvah in this place, right? The mitzvah is a reality in Modi'in, right? Not that you're a Modi'inite, but there's a reality to the mitzvah. So since there's a reality to the mitzvah, but your das is what's going to determine your tziruf to the makom or not, they have to deal with that issue. That's what they're grappling with. Do you understand? In other words, normally chovas makom means that wherever I'm from, that's what defines who I am. Okay, I'm a citizen of Philadelphia. So therefore, even if I'm in New York, I'm not a New Yorker. I'm a Philadelphian. Just because I'm visiting doesn't make me into a New Yorker. It doesn't change my identity, right? Because it goes by the nihug that I do is based on the makom where I'm from. That's what creates my nihugim. Okay, but that's the trick here. Ben Ir and Ben Krach, those are identities that only emerge because of the mitzvah, right? Not because of the makom or where I live. Because you're not a Ben Krachite. You're a Jerusalemite. You're Yerushalmi. Do you understand that chiluk? Yaakov, do you understand that chiluk?
Go back there.
It's all about das.
Your definition of
Right.
yourself is
Your
more
definition of your relationship to the city is based on your das.
So
That's what creates the tziruf, the das. That's what creates the tziruf.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And then if you define.
But the reality of your Ben Ir, in other words, if you live in a Krach, if you live in Jerusalem, so on Purim you're defined as a Ben Krach. Okay? But there's no intrinsic tziruf. In other words, how does it be that's where you're from, that's where you live, right? But you're not defined as a Ben Krach, essentially. Like that's not your residential identity. Do you know what I mean? It's like your identity as a resident. Do you know what I mean? You understand that chiluk? Like you're not called outside of Purim, you're not called a Ben Krach.
Right.
Only on Purim itself. So the mitzvah is what creates is what establishes how you're going to read. But then your das will create the tziruf. It's a little complex, but that's what I think that's what the Ramban's saying.
Right.
In other words, your decision.
It'd also be appropriate for someone to hear both, since both days are connected.
Why?
Because the 14th has a feature of the 15th. The 15th also has a feature of the 14th in it.
Right, but we don't want the guy to do both days, though. Ideally,
No, but if the pot, I mean,
like, why would you want the guy to do both days? Ideally, you don't want the guy to do both days. No, I mean, why would you want the guy to do both days? You know what I mean?
Commemorates the time.
commemorate
What?
both.
Too much work.
Commemorate both.
Commemorate both. No, but why? We're not looking for that.
How come we don't do both days?